What is going on, my friends? Welcome back to the Locks DFS NFL Cash Game Breakdown video. I'm your host, Christian Hardy, at BuyHardy on Twitter, BuyHardy on DraftKings. I'm going to be going over Week 8, going over some of my favorite quarterbacks, some of my favorite running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends that I'm going to be considering in cash for this week. And before we do that, I wanted to remind you of a few things. We're going to be doing a few other things added to this video. Of course, I'm going to go over my lineup from last week. But before we get into any of this, be sure to hit the like button. That helps us out a ton. But also be sure to comment and subscribe. If you comment and you're a subscriber, you have a chance to win a free season pass from locksdfs.com. That is the sponsor of this video. That is where my content is posted on my player grades, locks, as well as addies. We'll go into that. So locksdfs.com, please check us out. You can copy pass here, month passes, season pass for NFL is $100 for the rest of the year. And then we have the all sports pass, which will get you NBA, college football. And if you want some free college football content, I posted a video up on YouTube as well. So anyway, just check us out, locksdfs.com. That is the website. That is where we do all of our good stuff. And let's go ahead and look at last week. So I barely squeaked into cash for yet another double up win last week, which feels great. This is my lowest I got to not cashing, so that was great. I think obviously what helps me a little bit with that, if you had a lower score and didn't make it, is probably just playing single entry. So if you're not playing single entry, this is your best opportunity is playing these single entry tournaments, contests, big single entry contests. So obviously, ended up with Deshaun Watson. He finished around where Kyler Murray did. I'm not going to talk too much about quarterback. There were so many good ones last week. I'm not too upset about any of my decisions there. Obviously, Matt Ryan had a good game, a massive game as well. But Malcolm Brown pretty much was deadlocked in my lineup, and GPPs I went with a little bit of Kenyon Drake, and that worked out decently. A bunch of people got burned by him. They didn't have the right game script. The matchup ended up being king, and sometimes that happens. So, no problem with the play. Of course, I knew what I was getting into when I played Malcolm Brown. So it is kind of a little bit annoying they didn't even get a single catch, or I don't even know if he had a target in this game. So, no role in terms of that. Leonard Fournette, again, just a volume monster. We're going to talk about him again this week. He's very chalky. This game was actually extremely miserable to watch, especially as you can see as I own D.D. Westbrook. The clock moved so fast in this game. It was one of the earliest noon games to finish. Obviously, Jacksonville put up 6 points. Leonard Fournette, if he didn't get 6 catches, he has a terrible game. Leonard Fournette looked fine, and the volume is just going to continue to be there, so he's going to be in play. Wide receiver, I was pretty much down. Once I had made this build where I got Fournette, Bell, and Brown as my running backs, which were the most popular build in terms of running back. You can see in the double ups how popular they were. And then I found out that I could get Hopkins and Odell as well. I was like pretty set on that. Of course, on Sunday morning, once Tyreek is ruled in, I was very interested in him. But then we get a report from Glazer who's only played 50% of the snaps. It didn't work out too bad, me going Odell over Tyreek, which happened like 5 minutes before lock. I went Odell and then to Tyreek and then back to Odell. Reek ended up with those 2 touchdowns, but really he did all that on 50% of the snaps. So the process on Odell was still right. Odell also had like multiple catches called back last week. This is the game I was watching the most. It was the most exciting game to watch in the noon games last week. DeAndre Hopkins was a lock. Talked about him on the video. Not going to go into that too much. Tons of targets. Just didn't get the valuable ones. Got an end zone target, I think, 2, maybe even 2. Like I said with Dede, terrible game to watch. Thought he'd get more volume. They just couldn't move the ball, and that's what happened. Austin Hooper, obviously, having him bailed me out because I did not have Matt Ryan going off for me, and he was very chalky. That pretty much kept me just slivered in cash. Obviously, didn't make it into any GPPs. But yeah, that was my team from last week. I'll be doing that every week. So go to my cash team. So we can go ahead and get into my favorite plays of the week. I'm gonna start again by going over some of the injuries because there are gonna be a lot of stuff that I'm watching on Sunday morning that could really alter a lot of stuff about my teams. First thing is just these 2 running backs. What are their roles gonna be? Saquon Barkley and David Johnson. Obviously, Johnson relies on him playing. If he doesn't play, like I said it last week, smash Chase Edmonds. Just put him in your lineup. Figure out a way to get him in. Play him. I actually don't know where he's priced. Let me just find out real quick. 4.7. Yeah, just smash that. Dude's gonna run. Just play him. But yeah, I want to know, like, is Barkley right now, I don't see Barkley as too much of a cash play. I think he's a good play, but not thinking of him too much as a cash play right now. But if we hear that he's going to be getting full complement of snaps, which I mean, he played full practices all week. He declared himself ready for his usual workload. Like, if he's getting 80% of the snaps, he's one of the best plays on the slate. And people really haven't talked about that. Then I want to know about Johnson, if he's going to be in, what the deal is with that. He's obviously kind of questionable, game time decision. They said that if they were playing the game on Friday, he wouldn't be ready to go. So who knows what's going to be happening with that. Obviously, you have the Green Bay Packers wide receiver situation where Devontae Adams is out. Valdez-Scantling didn't practice all week. And Geronimo Allison is doubtful to play. So you have all these, the three wides are going to be Kumaro, Lazard, and Shepard. That opens that up. And then obviously you have Alvin Kamara, who's out. That opens up Latavius Murray. And then lastly, I want to know about see if we can find anything out about Todd Gurley's workload. I have interest in Darrell Henderson in GPPs anyway, because he's so cheap. He's $3,600. But if we hear that Gurley is going to be limited to any extent, that definitely makes me a lot more interested in Henderson, who I've been touting Henderson since last year in terms of his talent. I was surprised he went in the third round. He can catch the ball. He's an amazing runner. I think he was the leader in missed tackles last year, in top two of those. I think Demo led, and then Henderson was second. Like, he's a really, really good running back, and given the opportunity, he's going to bust it out. A lot of people know about him by now, of course. For a lot of people who've been paying attention to football, play season long, they know who Darrell Henderson is, and know that if he gets a spot to get a bunch of touches, he could really bust it out. Okay, let's go ahead and go on to my favorite plays this week. First up, a quarterback. They're really, like last week, I mean, you're pretty much in cash just going to be sticking to these top guys. I don't see anyone that I'm thinking about for cash under Matt Ryan. There are certainly some GPP plays in there. Goff, Daniel Jones, Minshew are a little bit interesting for GPP. But for cash, I'm going to be sticking up here. And my top guy I'm considering right now is Lamar Jackson. 6,800 at Seattle. Jackson has to go on the road. That kind of sucks, of course. And he may also have to play in kind of some wet conditions. But I just think this is a very good matchup for Jackson against the Seahawks team that is like bottom half in pressure. Their secondary is just like terrible. And when they're not getting much pressure on the quarterback, Jackson's not only gonna be able to run, but he's gonna be able to pass, especially if you have a guy like Marquise Brown that's gonna open up the secondary even more. He's questionable to play. I think he's leaning more towards playing. So I think that Jackson feels super comfortable in the pocket and have some success there. Then obviously on the ground, if you average these last 5 games out, he is averaging 12.68 DraftKings points per game, including the 100-yard bonuses, which he's reached twice. 12.68 DraftKings points per game just on the ground. That's very exciting. This is a game that definitely could end up being a shootout between the likely NFL MVP right now, unless Christian McCaffrey does something crazy. I think Russell Wilson looks like the clear leader. And, one of the guys who is going to be up there as well in Lamar Jackson. So definitely going to end up being a shootout. Both these defenses have fallen off from their heights in the past. Jackson, my favorite quarterback for cash, but I also am very heavily considering Kyler Murray right below him. Another team that's not going to create pressure. They have a worse secondary than Seattle. They have been carved up by pretty much every single quarterback they face. The Giants have. Obviously, Kyler Murray continues to play at a very fast pace. He's going to continue to get a bunch of attempts. And his rushing, we've seen it scaled up. I mean, 8 rushes, 10 rushes, 11 rushes after these smaller games down here in 3-3. So he's getting more comfortable running. It makes total sense. Dude is an absolute stud when he gets the ball in his hands and can run. He's averaging over 50 yards rushing per game over his last 4. So that's 5 points there. That's interesting. Russell Wilson, obviously on the other side of the Jackson game, is interesting. Josh Allen is smash spot, another guy who could probably rush for another guy who can rush for at least 50 yards. Definitely has the potential to do that. It's just a really, really good spot for Buffalo here. Miami, they're not very good. I don't know if you've been watching any football this year, but they're not very good. Matt Ryan, he's pretty much just a slam dunk for 300 yards a game, 356, 330, 394, 304, 320, 304 passing yard totals this year. So obviously he's facing a Rams defense that does add Jalen Ramsey, but he hasn't played in like a month, and he's only going to be practicing for the Rams for 1 or 2 practices, something like that. Talib, John Johnson, Marcus Peters, they're all no longer with the team. Even if Jalen Ramsey is shut down on whoever he's covering, likely to be Julio, I don't see how Ryan doesn't get the 300 a year. It's a great game environment. It's indoors, at home, in a pace-up game against the Rams. The Rams have run at the highest pace over the last month, even higher than the Cardinals. Highest total on the slate. It makes so much sense to play Matt Ryan. The only thing with Ryan is he doesn't have that rushing floor that you're going to get from other quarterbacks. So that makes him a little bit less appealing, but still definitely in play. So those are kind of the quarterbacks I'm considering. Hopefully I gave you a good idea, but I'm pretty much in cash, mostly considering Jackson and Murray. Okay, at running back, obviously I talked about Barkley. If I know that he's going to be getting a full workload, which I had not seen this comment previously, that he thought that he's good for his usual workload. That's really interesting, and he might be a guy that I jam in. I'm going to be honest. Could definitely end up seeing him in my cash lineup on. It's just a pace-up game. Arizona's not a good defense. Okay, let's move on to who I was going to talk about as running back one. And that's going to be Dalvin Cook. And I still have interest in Cook. It's just that, if I'm going to play Saquon, obviously I'm not going to get to Cook. I don't think I need to say that. But the Lions aren't as bad of a matchup as many might think. They're kind of middle of the pack in line yards, middle of the pack in rushing DVOA. And Vikings should pretty much look to, we knew that they were establishing the run at the beginning of the year. This is a divisional game where they're going on the road. They should be able to run pretty well against the Lions. I think that Cook is definitely in consideration for cash. I'm not sure where his ownership is coming in right now, but I think it should be pretty solid with a guy with this type of workload, getting 80% plus of the snaps, and with the passing role that's pretty consistent. So I think he's definitely in play for cash. Okay. Like I said, with Barkley in play, that's in my notes. Going down a little bit more, Leonard Fournette at 7K. Going to be probably the chalkiest player on the slate. I don't know what the ownership will be on Allen Lazard, who is 3,000 at wide receiver. If you take him off the slate, Fournette is for sure the chalkiest player on the slate, in my opinion. Going to play pretty much every snap, and that's just here to stay, it looks like. He's going to be playing like Christian McCaffrey snaps, like 95 to 100%. And he also has the most route runs of any running back in the league, and 36 targets through 6 games. 6 targets per game. That's pretty awesome to have a passing floor like that. You're getting 10 points, almost 10 points, 5 points, 10 points, 10 points, 8.8 points. That adds an awesome floor. And again, we talked about it last week. The dude has all these carries and only has 1 touchdown. The regression there is coming for sure. It's unavoidable. Obviously, Gardner Minshew could continue to throw all the touchdowns, but I think that Fournette's probably gonna end up doing that, getting in the end zone at some point for two touchdowns in a week. Cincinnati is giving up the 5th most line yards to running back, 6th worst rushing in DVOA. This is a very, very good matchup, not only because of Cincinnati not having a good defense all around, and we'll get to some of their wide receivers later. But Cincinnati is also 5th in situation neutral pace of play, which a lot of people don't recognize. Cincinnati just throws the ball so much that it adds to the play volume. So Fournette could end up getting upwards of 28 touches in this game because Jacksonville should have the ball so much. I also think Jacksonville has a much better matchup this week than New Orleans, although it's not at home. It's a much better spot. I feel more comfortable with them winning this game than I did with them winning the game last week and really controlling it and being able to move the ball. Feel a lot better this week. Yeah, so just smash Fournette in. Just smash him in. Marlon Mack is interesting at 6K. There are more guys in the mid-range here. Like I said, Todd Gurley's interesting. Chris Carson's interesting. Mack, I think Indianapolis is just going to be a team like Seattle last year that just wants to run the ball. It makes sense after they lost Andrew Luck that they would rely on the running game. Mack is a pretty good running back. They've got one of the most elite offensive lines in the league. Obviously, we're not going to be looking at something like this, 29 attempts. I think that's very unlikely. That was a game plan. That was a game plan for them. They just completely established the run. They dominated the run. I don't think that they'll be able to dominate Houston quite like this, but Houston definitely has a middling run defense. I'm not worried about shutting down Mack, and Mack also has a somewhat of a passing role. Although Naheem Hines will be in there as well, catching some passes, and he is more fit for that role, I guess, for a passing role. But Mack should be around 65%, 70% of his team's snaps, and is, I believe, He's the only guy who has touches inside the 5 so far this year in terms of running backs. I think Brissett has 1 carry inside the 5, so he's a go-to around the goal line. The Texans are giving up 140 yards to opposing running backs a game. I think Matt could definitely get to 100 a year. I think the volume is solid at 6K. I'm not like in love with it in cash. I think he's more of a cash play than GPP play because he didn't catch passes. But it's not like someone I'm locking in, but I do think he's a very good play. Obviously, I'm going to talk about Latavius Murray. 5.1K, DraftKings did price him more correctly. I'm curious to know what FanDuel did. I actually didn't even look at that before the video, but FanDuel seems like a place that would not have priced Murray correctly because he really hasn't done anything this year outside of a decent game last week where he caught some passes because Kamara got banged up. The Saints O-line is really good, and they should fare pretty well even against a pretty tough Chicago defense. Obviously, it is tough going to Chicago. It sucks. It's a pretty low team total for New Orleans, who I believe is like 19.5 or something like that is their team total. That's off the top of my head. Don't quote me on that. What's interesting about Latavius that I think he could actually end up with a decent passing role in this offense. I think they trust him to catch the ball. And he's caught the ball a little bit in the past. Not that he's known for that or anything, but he certainly has done that. He's going to be the guy inside the 5 they go to, of course. Zach Zenner and DeAndre Washington, I think, are behind him. I don't know if it's DeAndre Washington. Let's click on him. I think it is. I think that's him. That didn't help at all. Just D. Washington. Bears are missing defensive tackle Akeem Hicks, who is a very, very plus defensive tackle that helps in the run game. And like I said, the price tag isn't like smash, but I definitely think this is a really good spot for Murray. Guy who should be on the field for most of their snaps. Guy who should have somewhat of a passing role, especially with Bridgewater with the lower A dot. He likes to throw through running backs, tight end, that sort of thing. Obviously, we've seen and the tight end Jared Cook is out this week, so that should help with some shorter A dot targets as well for Murray. I just think that they could use him in that role. Yeah, so that's Murray at 5.1K. Obviously, Carry-On's right there too, and I'll talk about him real quick. He's certainly in play here at the same price. I'm going into a lot of plays here on this video. But his role kind of, we saw him a little bit get that slight decrease on Monday night, but I think he was just more product of game flow and that sort of thing. But I will say that the line has moved 4 points in favor of the Vikings here, from Lions by 2 to Vikings by 2, which sucks. Lions are pretty bad in run blocking, and the Vikings defensive line is pretty stout. However, it's mostly in creating sacks and QB hits and stuff like that, creating pressure on the quarterback. They're not awesome in run defense so far this year, but however, I think that just like Minnesota will run the ball a decent amount, I think that Detroit could do the same. And besides that, Carry-On does have a passing role as well. 4 targets, 3 targets, 1 target, 3 targets. So he's playing 70% of the snaps. He's going to be the goal line go-to. He's going to be the only guy who gets carries in the goal line. He's actually second in the NFL in touches inside the 5 at 7 rushes inside the 5. So he's going to be the go-to there. 5.1K. I think both these guys are definitely in play for cash. I lean Murray right now, but it's definitely very, very close. Also, like I said, a little bit interested in Darrell Henderson, who's all the way down here at 3.5K. I said 3.6, 3.5K, mostly as a GPP play. Okay. And speaking of the Rams in that good game environment, Darrell Henderson will be able to carve up in the middle of the field if he does get in, run his pass routes in the middle of the field. You know who else runs his routes in the middle of the field? Cooper Kupp. I'm smashing Cooper Kupp this week. I cannot see a scenario where I don't play him in cash. The volume is insane on Cooper Kupp. He leads the NFL in targets. He is 600 less than Julio Jones, who has like an abysmal share. I don't know the percentage, but of his team's targets. I'm not saying Julio Jones is a bad play. I'm just saying that for 600 less, you get a guy who has 17, 15, 12, 9, 10 targets. Obviously, the game against San Francisco was definitely a downswing for them. This is a much, much different matchup against Atlanta. Falcons are without Desmond Trufant. This is the highest game total of the week by a lot. Not by a lot, by a few points. Kupp leads the NFL in targets. It's the best game environment. Falcons, like I said, just terrible cover in the middle of the field. That's where he's going to be running a lot of his routes. Falcons also, this is a note that came in Evan Silva's matchups I wanted to throw in here as well, is that they've given her the 3rd most slot receptions and the most touchdowns as slot receivers since the start of the last year. The Falcons have. And again, they're missing Desmond Trufant. Their secondary already isn't very good. They've given up big games to receivers in past weeks. So, lastly, I'll say that, I am interested in Robert Woods at 5.6 as well. I'm probably going to be rolling out a double stack. Sorry, he's not 5.6. He is 5.9. He's 5.6 last week. Goff is going to operate with a clean pocket. That should give Woods more time to get downfield. That should give Cooks more time to get downfield. It should benefit both those guys. Like I said, I don't think the general public is going to be like, oh, fade the Rams because of last week. But if they are, I'll definitely take the lower ownership on Kupp. I think that people are playing Cooper Kupp. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, like, in terms of even if people who aren't watching any sort of content may not know that, oh, this is an awesome bounce back spot for the Rams, and it is. It is an awesome bounce back spot. Let's talk about someone that I might be going back to the Jacksonville double position player in cash. It's possible. There's a lot of bills that I've had DJ Shark in. Obviously, I'm playing Leonard Fournette. He's like a lock. But Shark, I've ended up with Shark. I don't give a shit, honestly. Cincinnati missing both of their starting cornerbacks, Drake Kirkpatrick, William Jackson. It was already a bad passing defense with those two in. They're both out. Chark is 8th in the NFL in air yards. He's in a very, obviously, like I just said, an awesome matchup. He's coming off a tough matchup, just like Kupp, where he had to face the Saints, was shut down by Marshawn Lattimore. Obviously ended up with only 22 yards in that game. Did get the targets, but just did not come through with the yards. Jacksonville just could not move the ball downfield. Gardner Minshew was under pressure. I mean, this is a much different game. Cincinnati's not going to create pressure. Cincinnati can't do anything on defense to save their lives. So Minshew's going to have time. Shark's going to get downfield. Shark is honestly emerging as one of the premier talents at wide receiver, and I do genuinely think that. It might sound like an overstatement, but dude looks really good this year. This game against Carolina, this game against Denver, both those games he looked awesome. Cincinnati's defense is just so brutal. And like I said with Fournette, this is going to be a pace-up game where as long as Jacksonville can move the ball in Cincinnati, there could be a lot of possessions in this game. Jacksonville is 29th typically in situations neutral pace-up in snaps because of Cincinnati's offense. So that also gives me a bump to Chark, who is a solid cash play and a great GPP play. I say great GPP play because I think he's gonna be low owned. But when I saw the price on Chark, I like jumped out of my chair. I'm gonna be honest with you. I love him this week, and there's someone right below him that everyone else loves this week, and that's T.Y. Hilton. Brissett has looked just like phenomenal when he throws to Hilton this year. Hilton has been the go-to. That's just who he is. You see these game logs; they might not be super appealing. Obviously, he didn't do well against Kansas City, but look, Hilton is fully back from his quad injury that he picked up in week 3. He had a week to recover here, and everyone's already heard about those splits against Houston. But more importantly, is Hilton at home? More importantly, is Houston missing Jonathan Joseph and Bradley Roby, their top 2 cornerbacks? Most important is this is a great game environment, the 3rd or 4th highest total on the slate. Also benefiting him is just the fact that Houston, like I said, doesn't have cornerbacks. So I think the price on Hilton is awesome. We're getting like a 6 target Hilton, 4 target Hilton instead of like 10 target, 9 target Hilton. Because if we were getting like that, he'd be like 6.5 or something like that. So it's definitely a great price play. If you look at pretty much any projections, Hilton is going to pop. I think the Colts will be able to move the ball decently in this game. I think they also could potentially get down in this game. I think the Colts defense is solid, but I also think that Deshaun Watson could find some space here and do his thing, and the Colts have to chase, and Hilton will be the guy that Brissett goes to. Pretty solid target share when he's in. So, everyone's going to talk about T.Y. Hilton this week. He's an awesome play. But DJ Shark above him is definitely really interesting as well. That's why I say he's shaded towards a GBP play for me. Chark is, although like I said, I've made cash builds that I'm thinking about where Chark is in there. So, who knows what's going to happen there. Going down a little bit. Actually, going down a lot. Let's just search his name. I don't even know what I'm doing. Alan Lazard at $3K for Green Bay. from what I've seen, could potentially be the chalkiest player on the slate. Obviously, when there's a guy at 3K, everyone will tend to gravitate toward him. Just like if we saw Darrell Henderson get the start at 3.6K, everyone would be playing him. Much different of a situation. I would smash that as well. But Lazard is someone that I'm thinking about this week. I'm not sure if he's going to be necessary to get a solid build. He would be if you're trying to play a guy like Zeke. He might be if you're trying to play a guy like Cook with Fournette, but probably would be necessary in that situation as well. So that's why Lazard is interesting, because he gets you those 8K running backs, and you can still feel good about the rest of your lineup. Let's talk about his role in the offense. We know that Devontae Adams is out. We know that Geronimo Allison is probably out. We know that Marquez Valdes-Scantling did not practice this week and is questionable and does not look likely to play. Obviously, this is a noon game. We're going to know before the game. But as of now, Lazard looks poised to be the wide receiver 2 on this team. I say the wide receiver 2 because Jake Kumerow should actually get the most snaps on this team. We've seen that Kumerow has little to no connection with Aaron Rodgers, but that said, because people were playing Lazard for $600 cheaper, and Kumerow he played more snaps, got more routes run last week when those guys got banged up. He's an interesting GPP play. This could be the week that Kumerow finally finds some rhythm with Rodgers. But Rodgers was touting Lazard after the game last week. Lazard will get the start here, assuming Valdes-Scantling is out. Lazard went 4 for 65 and 1 in only. He played 23% of the snaps. He ran 11 routes and got 5 targets on those 11 routes. So clearly he is getting separation from corners. Rodgers is finding him. He's a guy that is similar to a big-bodied guy who just can't. He's not a speed guy, but a guy who can out-physical you. Big wide receiver guy who's going to get targets probably in the red zone because he is so big. He's a good play, man. He's a good play. The price is awesome. That's all I'm going to say. I think you can project him for at least 6 targets in this game, assuming that Valdes-Scantling is out. And at 3K, 6 targets is pretty phenomenal. There are 2 other values I'll quickly touch on. Gosh, I'm talking about so many plays in this video. But Darius Slayton, he played every single drop back for Daniel Jones last week at 4.1K. Sterling Shepard is still out. He should continue to get those snaps. We're going to see Evan Ingram return. We're going to see Saquon Barkley return. That could definitely take a little bit away from Slayton, but benefiting Slayton is that he's not facing the Patriots and that he has a pace-up game against the Cardinals. I'd mostly be willing to use Slayton in game stacks, but he's definitely someone that, especially if Lazard gets shut down by MVS somehow getting in, I could see it going to a guy like Slayton. And then definitely more thin than Slayton at that same price, though, is Pettis, who has continued to see. This is a guy who was coming into the year was expected to be the wide receiver 1. That has not really happened, but is starting to move that direction. My bad, I'm going through my notes here. Yeah, so Washington is just devoid of real cornerback talent, which seems to be a trend across the NFL right now, to be honest with you, especially with all the injuries. But just some dusty corners in Washington right now. Pettis played a season-high 67% of the snaps last week, 52 snaps. Deebo Samuel is out, which also should open up a bigger role for him. You can see him out right there. That's going to give Pettis a bigger role. It's going to give him a more guaranteed snap share. So Pettis is interesting at 4.1K as well. Both those guys are interesting if you're looking for pivots off Chalk Lazard. Obviously, you're going to have to make some other moves because they're 1.1K more. But okay, tight end is really just a question of how much are you willing to pay this week. I mean, Kittle is in play, has a good matchup and is in play. Ingram has a good matchup. He's in play. Hooper has a good matchup. He's in play. Mark Andrews has a good matchup. He's in play. Darren Waller has a good matchup. He's in play. Hunter Henry has a good matchup. Not as good of a matchup, but he's in play. So pretty much it's going to be sticking above there with Henry. I mean, 4K Henry. It's why do you need to go lower than that? My favorite right now, I'm choosing between in cash, is going to be, I'm going to talk, for the sake of this video, I'll make the cash play Darren Waller. Just so you guys know, this is the guy I'm going to go to. Darnell Savage is going to be out again for the Packers, which should open up the middle of the field. He has been a beast when he's been on the field, obviously. Free safety is a big part of covering the tight end for pretty much any defense. So him being out is going to boost the matchup for Waller. Tyrell Williams, I think he's out. Yeah, okay. I didn't know if he had been ruled out for sure. So he is out, which means Waller's going to be getting a ton of targets in this game. He already has a massive share. I wish I had it pulled up the actual percentages of Waller's targets, his market share. But it's a lot. Like he's been getting a very solid share of his team's targets. I think the price of 4.7K is too cheap, and a pretty good matchup where I expect Oakland to have to pass to keep up with Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams, whatever it might be for the Packers. I think they'll get up in this game, and Waller will have to be the guy that they'll have to pass to, but I'm not sure if they're going to have success covering Waller, who is really in the midst of a breakout year. Evan Ingram is obviously really interesting because of the pace up, because Sterling Shepard is still out, because Arizona can't cover tight ends to save their life. However, it is very hard to pay 6.5K in cash. It's really, really hard to pay for 6.5K in cash. You're sacrificing a lot when you're doing that. And I just don't know if I'm going to get here in cash. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I think there's a very, very slim chance I end up on Ingram or Kittle in cash. And I think I'd prefer Ingram to Kittle right now. But Kittle's also a very good GPP play, especially because people are going to play Ingram here. Mark Andrews, Marquise Brown could be out, but also Seattle hasn't been good at covering the tight end. And then Hunter Henry is really the other guy I'm considering for cash right now because I think I'll be going cheap. I mean, dude, 5 targets in his first game back, 9 targets, and played 78% of dropbacks last week, not snaps, dropbacks. He should again see a boost in snaps here, possibly a boost in those routes run. He is just so cheap for the upside that he brings here, and it's just because he played on that Monday night game, so they didn't price him correctly after getting 9 targets. He looked phenomenal. Obviously, the Pittsburgh devoted pretty much everything they could to shutting down Keenan Allen, and that opened up things for Henry. But maybe teams will start to do that, and maybe Henry can find a workload with this team. He's obviously very talented. We've just been waiting for him to get healthy. I really, really like Hunter Henry this week. He fits really well into a lot of lineups I've been building. So him and Waller are the guys I'm considering. Okay, I know this video has already been very long, and I wanted to say before I make this part of the video, I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite team stacks. So I've been really experimenting with playing 3-entry, 5-entry max tournaments, and just getting some of my favorite stacks out there. I'm usually a one lineup player, I'm going to be honest, but this year with NFL and with college football, well, with NFL the contests are so good that you can get you can play a $20 3-entry max or a $50 3-entry max, and it's not that much of your bankroll. So yeah, let's talk about some of my favorite stacks this week, favorite game stacks, and I also just want to talk about general roster construction when you're trying to stack a game. And we're just gonna start with the I believe what is the highest total in the slate? Yeah, it is Rams and the Falcons. So I want to start this by starting with Matt Ryan. I just think that he has a little bit higher ceiling than Goff. Goff will be lower owned, but yeah, just gonna start with Ryan there. He seems safer for the 300 bonus. I could go Darrell Henderson here. And I'm not really sure I'm actually going to get a running back in this game when I'm trying to stack. But, you could go with a Ryan stack with run it back with Kupp, and then maybe stack with – I would actually go with someone that a lot of people might not have is Hooper is definitely interesting. He's been a go-to. Actually, the reason I like Hooper so much is because even if you're looking at his targets are extremely similar to Julio Jones. You're getting him at 2.7K less. So, yeah, let's go and just stack him up with Hooper here. And you know what? Man? You know what? We're going to click in Darrell Henderson. So, I mean, because Darrell Henderson is going to have a passing role in this game most likely. He only saw 2 targets last week, but he's a guy who can catch passes. We don't know how much Todd Gurley's going to play, but this is one way you can stack this game. Another way you can stack this game would be a Goff double stack with Kupp and Woods, and then again, probably going to want a piece to run it back. So either I'd probably honestly go Hooper again, but you could also go with Julio Jones, but that pretty restricts your salary with those 3 guys in there. So that's one way to stack this game up. Like I said, just go for the correlation there. Okay, moving on to the next one. I'm not going to build full lineups. I just want to show you guys kind of some interesting ways to stack up these games. This one, I far prefer stacking with Kyler Murray, so I'm actually just going to do that. But I think one interesting stack in this game, especially if we hear good things about David Johnson, could just be stacking both running backs. However, I probably want to go David Johnson in my Murray lineup, so I'm going to stay away from that. But I'm going to go Barkley on the other side. Not only does he have a running role, but he has a massive passing role. Obviously, you're going to go with Fitz in this lineup. And there you go. You've got a little bit of a correlation there. You can also, another idea is to go Murray Fitzgerald and then go with either like Slayton or Tate is pretty much probably going to be virtually unknown at that price. Yet should get a ton of targets. Arizona can't cover the slot. He's in a really good spot, to be honest with you. But the price is in a spot where there's a lot of other receivers. Obviously, talked about T.Y. Hilton, Chark. So he's going to be very underowned. He's very interesting. Definitely prefer going with someone like Cam over the chalkiness that may be Evan Ingram, especially in GPPs. So yeah, but either of those makes sense. You just want a piece to run it back here. Stack it up with a wide receiver, run it back. Obviously, even if we heard Kirk is in, I'd be definitely fine with double stacking with Kirk as well. Yeah. Okay, so there's that game. I'm going to run 2 more games. One is going to be Seattle, Baltimore, and this one obviously is very tough to pick a quarterback. Man. I mean, let's just try both real quick. Let's do a Russell Wilson to lock it, and then let's go with run it back with. This is a tough one to run it back on again, just like it was with Atlantic. Because I'm not super high on Julio, and he's also tough to get if you're going with Kupp. But yeah, let's just assume Marquise Brown plays, or of course you can go Mark Andrews here, and Metcalf is an interesting bet. The volume just is not there for me to really consider too heavily in GPPs. I'd be making a lot more lineups than as many as I'm making. And then obviously an interesting thing to do here would be just to go Ingram naked with Carson and Lockett. I think that's also interesting. Yeah, I mean, Baltimore just doesn't have a ton of passing volume, so it ends up where a lot of their receivers aren't awesome plays. So, yeah. And then lastly, the very, very low-owned stack that I'm going to be trying to get in at least some portion of my GPPs. The Gardner Minshew stack, baby. It's the Fade Fournette Gardner Minshew stack. We go Minshew, Chark. We run it back. We run it back on the Jacksonville Jaguars without Jalen Ramsey. We go with Tyler Boyd, who honestly is underpriced for a guy who could easily, get 14 targets, as we've seen in games before. Run it back with Tate or run it back with Boyd. You don't even have to double stack it up. The thing about Minshew that's interesting, and I'm going to be serious here, the thing about Minshew that's interesting is that, so all these quarterbacks are priced right above 6K. But Minshew is down here at 5.4. You actually get a decent, if you're playing Murray or Jackson, that's $1,300. That goes a long ways when you're building teams. So that is why I do think Minshew is it's like a legit stacking option because you can use that salary elsewhere to upgrade other positions or whatever. So, okay, hopefully that gave you an idea of how to stack. I could have gone into it more, and obviously you can go into more running back, even that Kyler Murray stack. I said not to play David Johnson, but he's a perfectly fine stack with Kyler. 8 targets, 5 targets, 11. He's one of their top receivers in terms of targets. So, there's so many different things you can do with stacks. Play around, do your thing. And even in games where you don't have the quarterback, try to stack one receiver one way, another receiver going back. That's just correlate the correct way, a running back with a defense, that sort of thing. Hopefully it helped you out a little bit. If you guys like me talking about that, let me know. I know I kind of ran on in this video, so if you don't like it, let me know that as well, and I won't do it next time. But hopefully that gave you guys a few ways to stack, and those are just some of the best games to stack this week. So, okay, just a reminder, just remember, comment on this video. You'll have a chance to win a free season pass. We'll be picking that free season pass from locksdfs.com. We're going to be picking that every single Thursday night video. So if you watch the Thursday night showdown videos, we do announce the winner every single week at the beginning of those videos. Be sure to follow me on Twitter. I'm at ByHardy, like I said at the beginning of the video. I am ByHardy on DraftKings. And be sure to check us out at locksdfs.com. That is where we post our lock sheet with our locks, our grades, our breakdowns on the showdown on Sunday night, Monday night. So check us out there, locksdfs.com. We appreciate it. And yeah, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Really appreciate you guys coming back here. And we will see you guys back here next week. Hopefully you guys all have a great, profitable week. Good luck and peace.